Hello all, this is Miss Christie. Today in this video segment we are going to be discussing cells. One prominent scientific theory out there is cell theory. This theory states that all organisms are made of cells. This includes the tiniest bacteria all the way up to the largest, most complex organism, such as whales. These cells are the smallest unit of life. Each cell has all of the characteristics of living things, including organization, reproduction, the intake of energy and nutrients, maintaining homeostasis, responding to their environment, and adapting. So, as a rule, cells are very tiny. There are a few exceptions, but in general, we need help to see these cells. Our naked eyes are not strong enough to see these itty-bitty structures. To see cells, we have to use microscopes to help us illuminate what's going on. So, cells are very tiny, and microscopes can magnify what we're looking at. There are two major types of microscope we're going to look at. The light microscope uses light as a source of illumination. The electron microscopes are going to use electrons as a way to show us what's going on in very tiny structures. Here we see two major types of light microscope. On the left, we have a compound microscope, and on the right, we have a dissecting microscope. Both of these are very common in science labs. For a compound microscope, we see that there is a light source at the bottom, and that light source illuminates our specimen. The light moves through the lenses to magnify our specimen. There are some mirrors in here, and then that projects that image to our eyes. During this entire process, we both magnify the specimen, making it appear larger, and we illuminate it or lighten it so that we can actually see what's going on. So here are some examples of things that have been magnified using a light microscope. So some of these are using a dissecting scope, so it looks at bigger things. So here in the center we have a louse. This is a salamander larva here. And we can also look at different cells. So over here on this corner we have onion cells going through mitosis. Over here we've got some nerve cells. Okay, this is the underside of a leaf. We can see a stomata. You've got a cross section of a leaf over here. So this shows you what the inside of that thin structure can look like. Down here we have some single-celled organisms. These guys are rotifers. They live together, and they're actually filtering out this water. So you can find these guys out in the pond, even the one we have here on campus. And then this last set over here are skin cells. So we can see lots of different types of cells when we look under a light microscope. So here's a couple other examples of cells under the scope, and we can see that sometimes cells are so tiny that a light microscope just isn't powerful enough to give us a clear picture. So we have sperm cells over here and a bacteria over here. So these are E. coli bacteria. When our light microscope isn't strong enough, we switch over to electron microscopes. So remember, these blast electrons through our specimen to help us see what's going on. So this whole structure over here is the electron microscope, and you can see that it's attached to some computers. So this is a very powerful machine, and it needs some help along the way. So we look inside of that machine. Again, you guys do not have to memorize this diagram. But we see that there is a beam that shoots electrons, starting up here, through our specimen so that we can magnify and see what's going on. There are two major types of electron microscope. The first one is a transmission electron microscope, or a TEM. So TEMs give us a two-dimensional picture, so a flat 2D picture of inside our cells, or inside of structures. So for example, up here in the corner, and these have been dyed for us to see contrasting structures better, but we have a plant cell over here. So we see it's a flat two-dimensional picture. You can see your nucleus. These green things are chloroplast. And you've got some vacuoles. Over here we have a flat two-dimensional picture of a nerve cell. So more detailed than those other nerve cells we saw. You can see things like our dendrites and our axon. Okay, we have some brain cells over here. So those nerve cells are extending outwards. Remember, your brains are made of nerve cells. Down here is a chloroplast, so this one is more magnified than that first one we looked at. And you can see the inner workings and inner structures of this chloroplast as well. So middle bottom we have another plant cell, different type of plant cell. And then over here at this side, one of my favorites is the brush border inside your intestines. Your intestines are folded and wrinkled, and on the inside layers of that we see this brush border. And these are finger-like projections called microvilli, and these help us absorb a large amount of nutrients that's going through after we've digested food. So here are a few more examples of a TEM micrograph. So we've got some very tiny structures here. Here in the middle is an E. coli bacteria. So look at the difference. Think about those E. coli that we looked at with a light microscope. They were tiny pink specks. Now we can actually see the whole bacterial cell. We can see the outer projections. We can even see some of the details of where things are found on the inside. So electron microscopes are far more powerful than our light microscope. On top of that, we have a couple of viruses here. So virus over here in the top corner. And these little viruses down here are actually attacking something like our E. coli. So this TEM gets to be very, very tiny. This picture over here is bacterial DNA. So these are round chromosomes that are found inside something like our E. coli. The second type of electron microscope is the scanning electron microscope, the SEM. This microscope takes a picture by scanning the surface and gives us a three-dimensional picture of the object we're looking at. So in this slide we see an ant and a spider. But you guys didn't know that these two creatures had hair on the outside of their exoskeleton. We also have the hooks from Velcro up here at the top. You can see the outer surface of wool, so type of hair. Over here in the corner, this is the friendly face of your local flea. Okay, down here we have a moth. You can see how those scales are almost furry or fluffy looking. Down at the bottom, there's a single-celled protist. Okay, this is also the foot of a salamander. There's also a mite, something you might find on dust. And then here in the corner, one of my personal favorites is a snowflake. So scientists got the bright idea to freeze one of these electron microscopes so they could actually take pictures of what the snowflakes look like on the outside. There's a really stunning set of pictures that come along with this. So we've seen that cells in general are very tiny, but there are exceptions to every rule. So if we look at the giant axon of a squid, it's very large. So even a normal-sized squid has this giant nerve cell that runs all through its body. And if we look at something like a colossal squid, this guy over here, who is far longer than a human, we can actually take his giant axon and manipulate it. So we can see it, we can work with it, we can touch it. So some of these cells are very large. Another type of cell that is very large are eggs. So after fertilization, the first step of an egg is a single-celled zygote. And this zygote can be very large in some cases. So an ostrich egg is very big. Even a hummingbird egg is big enough for us to see. So eggs are also, fun fact, some of the most expensive single cells you'll ever find. So sturgeon eggs you guys are looking for some caviar, can be up to $700 an ounce. And then there are places and people who buy human egg cells, and they can go for thousands of dollars per egg. We've said that cells are the smallest unit of life. So I want to look at a few structures that all cells have in common. It doesn't matter if you have bacterial cells or human body cells. All cells have DNA, cell guts, or cytoplasm, and a cell membrane. DNA is the genetic material of a cell. This is like a blueprint that codes for who and what you are. So the basics of DNA is that there's a sugar phosphate backbone and these nitrogenous bases that stick in the middle. And those bases, the sequence of the bases, codes for who and what we are. All cells also have cytoplasm. So this is the inner guts of a cell, and depending on what type of cell you are, it's going to vary as to what makes up the cytoplasm. But there are some common components in each cell. So those common components include things like enzymes. So these are a type of protein that helps speed up chemical reactions. There's like cellular workers. We also have ribosomes. So this guy here is a ribosome, and he is a protein builder. So it's a factory that creates new proteins. We're also going to see water molecules. Remember, those are crucial for life. And then we're going to see free-floating molecules. So you're going to have some sugars and some salts, amino acids and other building blocks. All these little bits and pieces that a cell needs to survive. The third component that all cells have in common is a plasma membrane. So cells have to have a way to keep their cell guts in. So to build plasma membranes, you need phospholipids. Remember, these guys have a dual personality. This is a type of lipid that has a phosphate head at one end, and that phosphate head is hydrophilic. It likes to be around water. And the other end is hydrophobic with these two fatty acid tails. So phospholipids will form a bilayer where these fatty acids will hide in the center while the phosphate heads face the water, both on the outside of the cell and on the inside of the cell. So plasma membranes are made up of a phospholipid bilayer. The plasma membrane also acts as a gatekeeper. So it is a semi-permeable membrane, meaning that it only lets certain things in and out of our cell. So you can see in this diagram here, we've got all kinds of different things embedded in that plasma membrane, such as proteins. And many of these proteins allow different molecules in and out, but they're very, very specific. So here's another picture of our plasma membrane, and we can see that it's a mosaic. So just like in art, when you have a mosaic made up of lots of little pieces that are different, a plasma membrane is made up of phospholipids. It's the primary component. We also see proteins, these big purple globs. We have some cholesterol embedded in the phospholipids. And this helps with fluidity, keeps it from freezing or becoming too liquidy. We see carbohydrates attached on the outside, and these are important for things like communication and attachments. Then you have other proteins that are sticking out, and they have some lipids attached. So there's lots of different parts and pieces to our plasma membrane. And all of these parts and pieces are actually fluid. So they're constantly moving and shifting relative to each other. So it's said that a plasma membrane is a fluid mosaic. So as that video clip mentioned, there are lots of parts and pieces and different things embedded in this fluid mosaic of a membrane. So a few examples are things like receptor proteins. These proteins receive information from molecules such as hormones. Another type of protein we see in the cell membrane are glycoproteins. So these have carbohydrates attached to them, and they make kind of a fingerprint so you can tell what kind of cell it is, and other cells can recognize it as well. Some proteins embedded in the plasma membrane actually allow molecules to go in and out. So these transport proteins help nutrients get in, wastes to go out, and they can either use energy or be passive transport. And we also see some enzymes embedded here. So these are the ones, remember, that speed up chemical reactions. So all cells have DNA, cytoplasm, and plasma membranes. So in the next part of this chapter, we'll start looking at the types of cells, so prokaryotic and eukaryotic, and the different structures that you can find specifically in eukaryotic cells.